So my name is Marcus Collins, and I am beyond excited to be with you guys. Just a little bit more about me. I'm a professor at the Ross School of Business. I teach in the marketing department. Go Blue, absolutely. We're in a warm audience right now. But that's actually the side gig. The full gig is I work in advertising at an agency called Donor, based in Southfield. Even though I work in advertising, I'm not necessarily an advertiser, by trade at least. I was an engineer undergrad, and then I ended up leaving engineering because it wasn't that fun for me. No offense to the engineers in the room. Then went to the music business before realizing the music industry sucks. So I came back to school to figure it all out, and then went out to go work at Apple, then went to New York to work at Beyonce, and then into the advertising industry. And right now, the space I work in is this notion of consumer connections. That is understanding the evolving media landscape. That is the technology that we use sheds data about ourselves, which you guys know very, very well, obviously. Understanding the behavioral sciences. That is the causality-based theory that guides the behavior that we take on. And lastly, having a very close proximity to culture. Now, when I thought about coming to visit you guys and speak with you today, it's like, what do you tell Google? Like, what do you talk about with the folks at Google? And I figured I'd talk to you about a very simple, concrete concept: perspective. Now, I love perspective because we talk about it a lot, and we all have one. But really, it kind of boils down to this for me: that things aren't the way they are. Things are the way that we are. That is, the way we see the world ultimately informs how we behave in the world. The lenses that we have by which we see the world influences the behaviors that we take on. And the beautiful part about this is that we can look at the exact same thing from two totally different perspectives and see two totally different things. Here's a way to tangibilize this. Take, for instance, my daughter, Georgia, who I love dearly. Right? She's the best, even when she's like this. I love her dearly. So Georgia is a fish. Right? She loves to swim. And I take full credit for this. My wife's over there, by the way. I take full credit for this because when she was an infant, we took her to the pool. I did one of these numbers. Check it. So there she goes. I release. She gets some airtime. Check it out. I catch her. Boom, I'm a perfect dad. Right? Now, here's how I saw that. This was my perspective as I saw that. I threw Georgia in the air just a little bit. Nothing alarming, just a little bit. Georgia, maybe she saw it a little bit higher. My wife? Monkees! You're killing our child. It's all a matter of perspective. The way you see the world ultimately informs how you behave in the world. Now I want to talk to you about perspective, particularly about culture. Now culture is one of those words that we use often. We talk about it, we think about it in media and celebrities, like that's culture. Or if you're a company, you say, we have a foosball table in the office. We have a great culture here. We observe Summer Fridays, we have a great culture. But those things are byproducts of culture. Culture, I think about it from the perspective of anthropology. Anthropologists describe culture based on four things. They are the beliefs that we hold. They are the artifacts that we don. The rituals, the social norms that we adhere to, and the language that we use, the lexicon, the dialect. And when these four things are adopted among the populace of people, it's said to represent their culture, right? And it manifests in tons of different ways. It manifests in their nationality, in their ethnicity, definitely the religions they subscribe to, and oftentimes the passion points that they hold dear, right? And we use iconography to describe and to project the cultures that we are a part of, the cultures that we ascribe to. Much like a peacock spreads his wings to mate, we do the exact same thing when it comes to the brands that we hold dear. Now look, you guys are smart, obviously, so you're like, look, this is totally obvious. But the obvious usually isn't obvious until someone points it out to you. For instance, say someone's going to get some headphones, right? I'm going to get some headphones. I go into Target. There's a long line of headphones. All the headphones look the same. They all kind of have the same sort of shape. Which one are people most likely to buy? Beats. Right? Not just Matthew. But we know that, right? Beats. Now, we know this because Beats is the silhouette of young America. Right? People don't even listen to music using Beats. It's just an artifact that we wear around our neck to say, this is who I am, these are the cultures that I subscribe to. Now, is Beats better than Bose? Yes? You think so? Someone's a die-hard Beats fan out there. I would argue no. Is Beats better than JBL? They're my clients, I definitely say no. Right? In fact, a couple years ago, someone dissected a pair of Beats by Dre headphones and found it only takes $17 to make a Beats by Dre headphones. People see that, they're like, Excuse me, what did you say? Yes. Yes. It's no wonder then why they dominate the market. It's not because of the value propositions of the products. It's because of the brand's proximity to culture. Because culture sidesteps all the conventional wisdoms that we know of or think about when we think about marketing. It's more powerful than my razor's sharper, my battery lasts longer, my car goes faster, my shampoo has more body, my deodorant will get you laid, right? It's more powerful than all those things because culture is associated with our identity. The way we see ourselves and how we want to be seen. And as Biggie once said, if you don't know, you know. How about this? What are these? Christian Louboutins, right? What else do they call it? Red bottom. What else do they call it? Bloody shoes. Bloody shoes, yeah! Look at that, yes! Bloody shoes! And we know that because of Miss Cardi B, right? Miss Cardi B introduced that language to us in her record, Bodak Yellow, right? Which went #1 on Billboard, right? It murdered on Billboard, right? Not only did it murder on Billboard, when Cardi B went #1 with Bodak Yellow, she also saw a 217% increase in search traffic for Christian Louboutins, which was equated to about $4.5 million of media value. The culture drives commerce. And if you don't know, now you know. Do you guys know what this is? Jordan, right? It's okay. Stop yourself, yes. It's Jordan, brand Jordan. But what else is it called? Jumpman, right, Jumpman. And in 2016, who jumped over Jumpman? Yeah, my man's way into the culture back here, by the way. He jumped over Jumpman. Now, for those who don't know, let me translate this for you. Adidas went from being #3 and shoe manufacturer or sneaker manufacturer in the country and over to brand Jordan in 2012, right, becoming #2. And a lot of this was attributed to what they call the Yeezy effect. Kanye made the Yeezys and just dominated things. It was also attributed to Pharrell and Stan Smith, right? And just actually Q12, Adidas overtook Nike. It was in Q12 sales. This isn't the first time we've seen this. We also saw it with Run DMC. The impact on culture drives commerce. You guys know this guy, right? Of course you know this guy. Yeah. The most emo rapper ever. And I love Drake. He's the best. The best. He talks to my soul, right? And you can't go anywhere without hearing a Drake record. Drake is the guy. And we know that Drake is very closely connected to his beloved city of Toronto. And just recently, in fact, someone equated the value of Drake on the economic power of Toronto, that Drake's responsible for 5% of the economy in Toronto. Because there's the 6 barbershop, there's the 6 restaurant, there's the 6 nail salon, all of this language that was introduced by Drake. That is ridiculously powerful. Unreal powerful. This is what culture does. This is the impact of culture. The beliefs that we hold, the artifacts that we don, the behaviors we take on, and the language that we use. This is culture with a capital C. This isn't just hip-hop culture. Though I would argue that American culture is hip-hop culture. Like, the ethos of hip-hop is, I came from nothing to something, and I'm stunting on you. That's exactly what American culture is. I pull myself up by bootstraps, now I'm stunting on you, right? Which is no wonder why hip-hop music is the #1 most consumed genre in the country. When we talk about culture, we mean culture with a capital C. For instance, go back to 2008, right? In the middle of a financial crisis, 2008. And you had an uprising of people who felt like capitalism was a very, very bad thing. So much so that they wanted to be counterculture. We're going to be completely antithetical to the capitalistic culture that we lived in. And we call these people affectionately hipsters. Right? Hipster is all about pushing against what we know of capitalism, pushing against what we know of adorning ourselves with material so we can express ourselves freely. They donned artifacts that were irreverent, that were ironic in some cases. You guys bought cars, they bought ridiculous bikes, and the whole nine, right? Face red, the whole nine. What was the drink of choice for hipsters? Adult beverage drink of choice. PBR. PBR, right? Now, why PBR? Because PBR as a brand is all about egalitarianism. They're all about individual expression. The ethos of the brand was completely connected to what the hipster community, the hipster culture was all about. They found a uniting forced based on the convictions that they both shared. And everyone who considered themselves a hipster were drinking PBR. Now you can look at that and say, wow, that's pretty interesting. But the impact on PBR's business was through the roof. Hockey stick growth at the time of the rising of this culture that we all call hipsters. So much so, it turned PBR into $1 billion business, which is ridiculous. Now you can say that, like, well, what was the rest of the market doing? Well, I'll tell you what the rest of the market was doing. Everyone else was either declining or flatlining, while PBR was murdering. If you don't know, now you know. We also know this when we think about proposing, right? We propose with a diamond, right? And why do we propose with a diamond? Oh, I'm sorry, why do we propose with a diamond, question mark?
Diamonds last forever.
Diamond lasts forever. And who told us that? De Beers. Yes. De Beers said diamonds are forever. So if you love her or you love your loved one, you better get a diamond. And you know you better not propose with a ruby. She's like, you better get up. Not happy, buddy. Try again. Right? We propose with a diamond because diamonds last forever. Because diamonds are forever. So much so that as much love as you have for that person, save up 3 months of your salary to show the love within this rock that lasts forever. Well, I'll tell you why De Beers tells you that it lasts forever. Because the resale value for diamonds is actually pretty awful. And they have a monopoly, a seemingly monopoly, on diamonds, so they constrict the supply and tell you that it lasts forever. Don't go resell it, because you'll see that this is bogus. And as a result, when this campaign hit the market in the late 1930s, we started to propose with a diamond. And we see the exact same thing happen in Japan. They rolled out the same campaign. Brands who have an impact on culture end up impacting commerce. And if you don't know, now you know. We also see this when you think about smiles. You ever wonder why back in the day, people were mean mugging in their photos and their portraits? But then today, we can't stop smiling. We're all smiles, right? Even Kanye has some issues with this, right? Can't stop smiling, right? Now, one would say, well, that's because back in the day, people's photos, people's pictures were taken via portrait. It took a long time, and you can't hold a smile that long. Like your face gets fatigued, muscle gets fatigued, and people just kind of straight look the whole time. But even with the advent of cameras, people still took very grimace-looking photos. And this wasn't because of technology, this was because of the culture. The belief at the time was that the idea of smiling in photos or in portraits was childlike. It was half-wit. You were less than. That was the belief, which is why the first photo of a standing president, they do look like he belongs in The Conjuring or something, right? completely not happy. No joy happening there. And even at the turn of the century, where cameras became much more ubiquitous and more people had access to them, we still didn't smile very much in photos. So if you are a camera company that makes your business from people buying cameras and buying film and taking lots of pictures, people think of taking photos as a serious business, they're not taking a lot of photos, it's a bad situation for you. So Eastman and Kodak said, we gotta change this up, man. We have to reposition how people think about what photos are meant to be. So they introduced the idea of the Kodak moment. Taking photos is about capturing and preserving these joyous moments. It's about preserving these moments that we have with people that we love, so much so that we say, cheese, when we smile, and take photos. Completely changed not only the belief, but the behavior. And fortunately, when this rolled out at the turn of the century, it measured very closely, or lined up very closely with a study that was done on yearbook photos. Where they took yearbook photos over a century's time and measured the curvatures of faces in the photos to see how often or how much people were smiling. And we saw more and more who smiled. This is what we do. Which is why that guy now looks like this kind of guy. And the result of it was massive for Kodak's business, almost $6 billion. Kodak was in 2005. Unfortunately, they missed a cultural shift, kind of played themselves. We know how that ended up, right? Not so good, right? So why does this matter? Why does any of this matter? I tell you why it matters. It matters because brands who lead culture are more successful than those who follow. That is, brands who push culture forward, brands who contribute to the culture are more successful than those who follow. They contribute to the beliefs, the artifacts we don, the language we take on, the behaviors we take on. The brands who lead that push it forward. And people use those brands to communicate something about themselves. Whether it's Apple, Nike, Whole Foods, Starbucks. People get tattoos of Harley Davidson on their body. You don't see nobody walking around with a Snuggies tattoo on their body, right? We use these brands to communicate our identity. And when we understand the impact of culture on commerce, we can then superimpose it with what we know of human behavior, and then superimpose that on what we know of people's behavior based on the shedding of data from the behaviors they take on, and allow us to better connect with consumers. We know who they really are. Here's a few examples of this in action. So Netflix is one of our clients at Donor, and Netflix came to us and said, hey, we want to launch season 5 of House of Cards. It's got a lot of momentum happening, things are going well, but listen, this is in the middle of the most divisive, drama-filled election cycle we've probably ever seen, at least in our lifetime. So how might we be a part of this cultural movement? How might we be a part of the conversation? So we took on the assignment and we said, well, what cultural thing can we lean into? What can we take advantage of? And the first thing we thought about was, well, the actual logo of the show. Upside down flag. And what does the upside down flag signal?
Distress.
Distress, exactly, right? Culturally, we know that an upside down flag means troubles are brewing, help. So we thought, what more opportune time than to launch the teaser for the season 5 House of Cards new season than here. So during the inauguration of now President Trump, we launched this little ditty.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So zero media behind it, which I know is not a good thing for you guys, but zero media behind it. We saw 100,000 shares per hour for the first 18 hours of launching this thing. Not because it was so radical, but because it had a place. It contributed to the culture, which allowed people to communicate how they feel, which is ridiculously powerful. Now, you can look at House of Cards and say, well, that's already culturally relevant. That's a cheat. That's a cheat code. This is something that's not as culturally relevant. Potbelly. You guys know Potbelly, yes? You guys know Potbelly, yes?
Yes.
All right, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Right. So Potbelly, for those who don't know, who didn't say yes, Potbelly is a sandwich shop, right? They sell sandwiches. They sell toasted sandwiches, hand-dipped milkshakes, and daily baked cookies, TM. Right? So that's Potbelly. Now, Potbelly came to us and said, we want to tell better stories about the brand. We want to move from being this kind of like culty, kind of iconic brand, or culty kind of brand to an iconic brand, bring more people in. So the first thing we asked them was like, well, what do you believe? Like, why do you exist? What's the North Star that guides you? And they said, well, we believe in fresh ingredients. We believe in tastier sandwiches. Like, no. That's what you do. Why do you do it? What's the belief? Very Simon Sinek kind of approach. He said, well, they don't know. After spending some time with the CEO, spending some time with the founder said, basically, I made these sandwiches to make people happy. It made people happy making these sandwiches. That made me happy. So there's happiness abound. So we said, well, there it is then. You're not in the business of making sandwiches. You're in the business of happiness. Which means to shift your perspective, the way you see the world, from being in the sandwich business to being in the happiness business. So we took their communications and turned it from being good food, good vibes, to feed your smile. Right? We don't just feed your bellies, we feed your smiles. We're all about happiness. So the question now became, so who do we go after? Who do we target? Well, these guys don't have a lot of money. They just don't, right? Whatever currency I have in my pocket right now is probably more than their marketing budget. They have about $20, right? Not a lot of money. So we thought, well, let's start with the people who love you most. The people who are part of your email distribution. They are the most ravenous fans. They love the brand. Who are those people? And fortunately for us, they had a list of them. They call them the sandwich board. And these are the people that they send rebates to. They test new products with them. Like, this is like their people. So we said, give us those email addresses. And we took those email addresses and we converted them to the associating Twitter handles. And the idea was like, let's find out who these people are beyond being hardcore sandwich fans. So with Crimson Hexagon, which is an AI consumer insight platform, we built this prototype, a networking mapping tool that allowed us to take those email addresses or those Twitter handles, dump them into the tool, and see what these people had in common, right? So this is a rendering of it. So we take these Twitter handles, dump them into the tool, and we start seeing the connectivity between them. The clusters that you see are conversations not about sandwiches, but about things that are happening in their life, that are happening in culture, things of that nature, to get a better understanding of who these people are. And in doing this exercise, we saw four things. Four things that were disproportionate to these people versus the rest of Twitter. And here they are. The first, they were hardcore sports fans. And truthfully, we didn't feel like that was very discriminating because I feel like a lot of people like sports. So it's like, we don't know if we have any right to be a part of that. Then we saw Christians, and these were like hardcore, like Joel Osteen, happy Christians, which was great because it's a happy brand. But the client, I didn't read into that, so we kept it moving, right? We saw some tech startups, some MarTech in particular, but we didn't feel like we had any right to be a part of that. But then we saw a lot of people talk about music. Now again, music is not very discriminating. Like, everyone likes music. I've never met someone in life who said, I hate music. If you meet that person, they're a monster, stay away. Everyone likes music, so it's not very discriminating on the surface. But when we look closer to things that are being shared, we saw that they were sharing SoundCloud files, which is really small in comparison to Spotify, or YouTube, or YouTube, or YouTube. I know I am. Right? Very, very small. So that was actually pretty discriminating, and particularly SoundCloud, these aren't usually signed artists, they're underground artists. This is a way to discover new artists. So we felt that music is probably a good avenue for us to get into the culture, particularly because we have live musicians who play during lunch. So now we got a way in. So we came up with some ideas for the client, and we pitched the ideas and said, we love that, and give me some of that. And the idea was like, let's go test some stuff. Now usually you get a focus group of people to look at the work and say, I like that, and I'll buy that because I like that work. But typically they're all lying because self-reported data is terribly flawed, at least biased. So instead of asking people, because we didn't have money to get it wrong, we decided to ask their bodies. So we partnered with Michigan State's Media, Advertising, and Psychology Lab. And we brought in respondents to look at the work that we were proposing in a faux Facebook-like environment. So they saw some regular content and then the work that we were proposing. Some regular content and the work that we were proposing. And over these respondents, we were then tracking or taking their physiological response. Sweat gland release, heart cardio activity, respiratory activity, eye tracking, zygomatic muscle, which is the smile muscle. And we were attributing what we knew of the psychological drivers to those physiological manifestations. And the work that performed the best, that's the work we put in the market.
Making great sandwiches that make people really, really happy. It's Potbelly's mission. But how do you own that position in the social sphere when your annual revenue is less than your competitor's ad budget? We melded data, tech, and genuine happiness to feed smiles across the web. First, we set our sights on arguably the most unhappy place ever, Twitter. Through our partnership with Crimson Hexagon, an AI-powered consumer insights platform, we identified 100 sad tweets and had Potbelly musicians respond with 100 original happy songs, in real time, all during one lunch day.
Turn that frown upside down.
When we learned Paula's fish died, we entertained her with this.
I'm so sorry to hear about your fish.
At Meg Moles fell out of a tree.
Yeah, you're tweeting today. I'm glad you're okay.
No matter the problem, we had a happy response.
I'm just gonna tell you, you're the very best.
We flooded Twitter with smile songs, and Twitter, well, they smiled back. But the good vibes didn't end there. We helped entire cities in need of happiness by creating the Smile Scale, a one-of-a-kind algorithm that synthesizes everything from weather and traffic data to results from major sporting events and social media happenings across key cities, then automatically serves customized pieces of content. If it's raining in Dallas, they get this. If traffic is bad in Chicago, they see this. And if Detroit's favorite baseball team loses, we cheer them up with this. The results? 10 times more brand engagements, 20 times more Twitter followers. Overall, we spread happiness to more than 16 million people. That's a whole lot of smiles.
the more important part of this is that with only $60,000 in media spend, we saw a 2.8% increase in store traffic for the stores where we did the smile scale activations, which is ridiculously powerful, right? It's crazy, crazy powerful. Taking what we know of behavioral sciences, applying them to what we know of the evolving media landscape, and finding a vehicle, an access, license to be a part of culture. Now, Netflix, kind of sexy, Potbelly, not so much, but sort of fun. Let's get like really brass tacks, like CPG, like this is not sexy by any stretch. Let's talk farmland. You guys know farmland? So farmland, they're a pork manufacturer, right? They sell bacon, awesome, delicious bacon, right? Now you look at a pork manufacturer like farmland, and you say, well, there's nothing cool about farmland. So if you saw farmland and Supreme together, they'd have no interaction whatsoever. A hype beast like Supreme and a pork manufacturer like farmland that a lot of people don't know about, what would they have in common? People probably like, I don't know, right? So the question becomes then, what do you do? Or what could be done? Typically nothing until a brand like Supreme jacks your logo. So Supreme, notorious for taking other people's IP and conquesting it for their own, they took the logo of our clients. And we saw this, like, what are they doing? This is illegal, you can't do this. But Supreme feels like they can, because they're gonna do whatever they're gonna do. And in those cases, you have three choices. You could either litigate, that is, you give them a cease and desist. You can just ignore it, which most people do because Supreme doesn't care. Or the third, you can join in. And that's what we decided to do. I'll let the guys from StockX explain it.
If imitation is the highest form of flattery, then Supreme is truly a world-class kiss ass. The legendary streetwear company has a long history of borrowing designs from other brands, and last week they added another instant classic to their legacy. The Week 1 Horizon hats dropped without much fanfare, despite bearing a striking resemblance to the Farmland Foods logo, a Missouri-based pork producer, probably the least hype beast company on earth. That wasn't until Friday, when the agro-business giant took to Twitter and called out the apparent forgery, causing Horizon hat prices to immediately pop. The hats went from $70 before the tweet to as much as $100 after, a 40% increase overnight, proving once again that streetwear loves a scandal, and controversy is the cousin of hype. Turning now to the week ahead.
So we saw them jack our logo, we responded in a tweet. And I guess somewhat surprisingly, like Twitter went crazy. They were like, yo, I'm sorry. Right? Lots of energy, lots of excitement. But we didn't stop there, because we knew that Supreme was going to do another drop the following week. We decided to do our own drop. That is, Farmland opened up an Instagram handle, and we created a lookbook where we donned our farmers Supreme gear. Right? So our farmers are out there doing what they do, decked out in Supreme wear. Right? Or as the trades would say, we out Supreme. Right? This got picked up in culture, got picked up in the trades, it got picked up in hypebeast. It was just amazing, amazing stuff. This was considered one of the best creative activations that was done in the last couple months. But this is really where it's at. How do we find what we know of human behavior, what we know of the evolving media landscape, and what we know of culture to connect with people in a real, meaningful way? And I think about my job, ultimately, is to translate culture for brands. And then translate brands for the culture in such a way that they connect in real, meaningful ways. And luckily, I have a chance to do that with some of the biggest brands in the world, which has been awesome. Now, that's me, but why does that matter for you? I'll tell you why that matters for you. Because culture allows us to get much closer to humanity, to connect with people in a really meaningful way. And what the literature is showing us more and more, the research is demonstrating that people care less about the product benefits and care more about emotional connections. Our ability to connect with humanity matters more than how sharp our razor is, how long our battery lasts, how much body is in our shampoo. People care about human connections. And it also drives the cash register, which is pretty good. But it should also matter to you individually as well. And I tell you why. You know, especially for people who are just starting their career or neophytes in their career, trying to figure it out. We're constantly trying to find a way to up our game. What's our strategic advantage at work so I can rise up the ranks, so I can be more successful? And I would argue that understanding culture is a really powerful way to do that. Because look, I know you're surprised, but I used to get it in back in the day. Like, boy, I used to get it in. Right? I was a songwriter for a living. I released music. Like, that's what I did. I used to perform. Opened up for 112, Jagged Edge, Keisha Cole. But like, those days are behind me. I have a 3.5-year-old turning 14 it seems like, right? And my wife and my daughter, we live on a cul-de-sac, right? And sometimes we're matching outfits to get $4 off our sandwiches. That's where we are in life, right? I gotta work really, really, really hard to be a part of the culture. But for a lot of you, especially y'all who know about Kodak, you could know about Kodak Yellow, a lot of you are already close to the culture. And that becomes your superpower. That becomes your differentiator as you think about your career. How do you succeed in the world of marketing? You leverage culture. Because brands who lead culture are more successful than those who follow. You have that power right now, especially those who are close to it. You know it, but you're not using it. It's like this guy. You have all the tools available to you, but you're not using it. And if you're close to the culture, stay close. Stay close to the culture and stay curious. This will be the differentiator that helps your brands succeed by pushing and contributing to the culture, pushing it forward. I hope this was helpful. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks for coming. I always tried to get into your class in Ross, but I never had enough bit points, so that's something. Great to hear you talk. I'm curious if you can give any examples of brands trying to be like the culture setter, but then it ends up backfiring and ends up sort of being worse for the brand.
I mean, unfortunately, there are more examples than that than there are good examples. I guess probably the most ubiquitous one I think of is Pepsi, who tried to tap into a cultural moment, and they didn't make it about the people, they made it about them. And it turned into a meme that was pie all in their face, right? And really, the issue there is that those people at Pepsi, they weren't dumb. They're really smart people, MBAs from great schools, right? Smart people. And it wasn't that they were dumb or just completely oblivious, they just weren't close to the culture. They didn't understand the shared beliefs, the artifacts, the social norms, the unwritten rules, the language that they use. And it's the lack of understanding the nuances that gets you out of step. When you don't understand the nuances, that's when you play yourself. So the idea is to stay very, 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 very close to the culture. And oftentimes it requires you being a part of the culture as opposed to being a tourist. Right? Back in the day, we used to call it ethnographic studies. Right? Like getting way, way in. Yeah.
Marcus, I think I saw an example like a week ago of something you're talking about with Wendy's. Did you see the tweet that Wendy's sent out where they were kind of dogging the Nebraska coach? His name is Frost. And they said he had Frosty, Michigan was beating him like 40-0 at halftime. And they put out a tweet during halftime. Yeah. And next thing you know, it's going viral. I see it on national news. I see it on ESPN. And, you know, it's the Nebraska fans were not happy because they said, hey, you know, we eat at Wendy's too. And then Wendy's on their official like Twitter handle said, we're pretty sure that, you know, Nebraskans have a sense of humor. Some of them were still unhappy, and they said, well, we may start carrying pacifiers. This goes crazy again. I'm like, wow. They're not talking about their food, but then all of a sudden a lot of people are going, I'm going to go eat at Wendy's. I just love that they got the courage to kind of get out there and cause some trouble.
Yeah, I think Wendy's, without being very, very close to their business, I think Wendy's figured we're number 3 in this space. Why not throw some shots? And their entire strategy at this point is very much about trolling everybody else. Right? Who's going to troll? And you know what? If humans get hurt, come on, laugh it off. And considering this is a part of their ethos now, people don't, unless you're from Nebraska, people have pretty thick skin when it comes to that sort of thing. But they're hugging all the right nuances of the culture that they're a part of, and we see things getting shared or going viral because people who believe the same thing that Wendy's does, their take on things, people share it also. Right? It's all about community. Community is another way of talking about the cultures that we're a part of.
You see a lot of hype around like YouTube collaborations, Instagram collaborations, these kind of integrations that brands are trying to do. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on on that, and whether that's actually getting close to culture or if it's sort of counter.
So you're talking about like as far as like taking advantage of the platform to do things?
Right, or more like the collaborations with the creators on those platforms.
Right, so I'd say this, when we think about the technology, the zeros and ones, if you will, the zeros and ones are the facilitator of networks, right? Things that normally be disparate are now connected thanks to data that goes from one node to the next. So Google's of the world, same sort of thing. And what we find when we extrapolate that, not only talk about the network of things, the network of people and things, but also about the network of people and people. And things like Instagram, Facebook, those social networking platforms are connecting people who see the world similarly, who are homophilically connected. That is, they share the same beliefs, social norms, unwritten rules, and rituals. So I think when brands partner with platforms, technologies who understand the dynamics of the network, dynamics of the culture, they borrow the proxy, right? They borrow the people who know the culture better than they do to get them closer to it. I think that's massively powerful. The idea, though, is that it's always going to be an outsourced skill. So it's not even the capability of the brand, right? Capability is about repeatability and reliability. And I have to outsource that, then I really don't have it. Which is good because they get a couple at-bats to do something powerful, but it's a challenge for them because it's not really inside the ethos of what the brand is all about.
Sure.
So if you're not a part of the culture that you're trying to get close to, you can't run ethnographic studies.
Yep.
Are there tools that are available to us? I mean, I'm actually thinking of an advertiser group that I work with that's aftermarket auto. So it's exact opposite gender, exact different age range, different lifestyle entirely. But I want to get to know them a little bit more intimately. So do you have ideas for tools we can tap into?
Well, I know one, it's called Google. No, the thing is this, which is why it's so important to understand the evolving media landscape, right? Social listening, search behavior, viewership behavior, we get a sense, it's a proxy to what people do, what they believe, where they go, they talk about what they believe, we know what they wear, we know what artifacts they've done because they take pictures of them. These things provide a proxy that we normally would have to go live with the coal miners to know what coal miners do. Instead, we can see them from a distance, in a short sort of burst, but a large representation of the population that we can pull a sample representation out and say, this is a real thing, right? And it's not really defined by demography, it's not defined by psychographics either. It's defined by the beliefs that we hold, the behaviors we subscribe to, the language that we use. In tech, like search, like social listening, those things provide a bird's eye view that we normally wouldn't have access to without a ton of resources. I mean, I rely, my Excalibur of sorts is Google Trends and Crimson Hexagon. I use it for everything to better understand people. I have clients across a wide spectrum who are going after different cultures, different networks, so it requires me being able to code switch between them, and I can't do all that, right? I can't be that close to all of them. So I either use people who work for the agency who are close to the culture, or I use some proxy via the technologies available.
With the social listening tools, so I assume those are like paid subscriptions, so I'm more thinking, you know, we know the wealth of Google tools that we have at our disposal. Are there free social listening tools?
Absolutely, Twitter Advanced Search.
Okay, cool.
Super free.
Yeah.
Like it's not as robust as using Crimson or a Hootsuite or something like that, but it's free. It gives you a nice down and dirty look at what's going on. Super representative of a sample of people. Like, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My question is, you know, like I know a lot of people have seen like the Nike Just Do It campaign, for example. And so I guess my question is like when making a decision to, you know, launch a campaign like that, when it might be considered, well, it not might be considered, some would consider it to be, you know, culturally polarizing.
Sure.
How do you go? How does a company make? What decision making goes into that?
So I think it really boils down to conviction. What do you believe, right? Simon Sinek would say, why do you exist? People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, right? What do you believe? And I think the biggest opportunity for brands are to tap into networks who share the same belief as the brand. Because those are the brands we use to communicate, this is who I am, this is how I see the world, right? And conviction, by its very essence, requires saying no to things. It requires doing things that may be divisive to people who don't see the world the way you do. And the fact that Nike was like, no, we're standing with Kaepernick because he aligns to our belief system. And if you don't rock with that, then you don't rock with us. And those people are burning their Nikes and say, I'm never going to buy another pair of Nikes. You're going to die, Nike. Your company sucks. But the people who believe what Nike believes, who stand with Kaepernick as well, what did they say? Give me 2 pair, right? I want more. I'm going to buy more because this thing is a representation of our belief. So, you know, it's difficult. It is a simple idea, but it's not easy. And we often confuse simplicity and ease, right? Like, losing weight is a simple idea. Don't eat so much and move more. Pretty simple. Damn if it ain't easy, right? And the same thing goes with convictions for brands. Like, what do you really believe? If you believe that, will you stand up for that when everyone else is sitting down? When everyone else is against you, will you stand up for it? That is what conviction is all about. And the brands who have very clear and salient convictions, not only do people know what they believe and therefore they use those brands, but all their actions, their communications, the people that they hire, those people come towards the brand. Right? I mean, that's the idea that brands should have conviction, not just what they communicate, but also within the organization. So that people who are part of the organization, they believe. And they too preach the gospel. And they too are demonstrative representations of the brand's conviction. Makes sense, yeah?
What happens if a company does have conviction, but then people start viewing it as appropriation?
This is about the nuances of the culture. Like, it's a hard one to say. When we pay mind to the nuances, we feel like it's a real thing. And people who know the nuances, when someone's saying, they're appropriate, like, no, you don't understand. Because the brand has always been a part of this, here are all the demonstrative representations, the evidence that shows this brand's always been this way. So them doing this is not, it's nothing new. This is right in line with what they've always been about. But you gotta be about it, right? What did he say? Don't talk about it, be about it, right? The same thing.
Hey. So I'm really big on like influencer marketing.
Yeah.
So like I know in the past sophomore year when Beyonce dropped her little video formation and she mentioned Red Lobster.
Yep.
And like after that, like sales increased, like people going to Red Lobster. And then like just like last week, Kylie Jenner, she put on her Snapchat, she had milk for the first time. It's like a lot of these dairy brands are like sending her milk and she's just like posting like all these things. So my question is like, should companies or brands like continue to ride that wave and like use that celebrity or influencer to promote their brands, or should it like try to tap into other influencer and other culture? So
I'll start this. I'll answer your question with a step back and then we'll step into it. So the first is like unpacking this idea of influencers, right? So when we think of like the Kylie Jenners, the Beyoncés, the Kanyes of the world as influencers, and they have influence, but the literature will describe their influence as ideological influence. That is, we look up to that, we aspire to that, but we don't compare ourselves to it, right? We don't hear Kanye West talking about wearing in his Bentley, and then we get in our Toyota like I suck at life. Right? He's talking about he has so much money, look at our paycheck, like I hate myself. We don't do that. We compare ourselves to people who are like us, people who are part of the same network that we're part of, right? Our peers. So when I think about influencers at that level, like they're basically contextualized media. They're bright wattage media. But those aren't, but their media isn't what makes behavior stick. It's your people which makes behavior stick. One would say that culture moves forward on the basis of one simple question. Do people like me do something like this? The answer is yes, I do it. The answer is no, I don't. And we make a decision hundreds of times a day. People like me do something like this. So say I see Jay-Z wear a super cool hat, and I'm like, that hat's dope, I got shoes that match it, I'm buying that hat, right? I go buy the hat, and then I go to lunch with my friends, and I sit at lunch, and they're like, what are you wearing? Like, you don't like my hat? Like, you're like an idiot, take that hat off. What am I gonna do? I'm taking that hat off. Now put it in the closet, it's never seen the light of day, right? Our people are what makes the things stick. Because our people are the people that we want to be connected to. As Aristotle was saying, we're social animals by nature, so we do everything we can to connect people who are just like us. They subscribe to the same beliefs, same social norms, same written rules, and they use the same language, right? So, I think about how we leverage influence in this way. Well, we leverage the media that they provide, for sure, right? But we have to make sure that there is some concurrence. That is, there's a lot of visibility of people like me doing that thing, right? Like, Beyonce says, when he does me good, I take it to Red Lobster, right? And it wasn't until people were like, me too, girl, I was hungry, you better take me to Red Lobster, right? That people like me do this, and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna do this as well. And it creates the cultural weight that allows it to propagate across the network. So the short answer is yes, absolutely, as long as it aligns to what the brand is all about. But what's most important is how do we get it to propagate across the social web to these networks of people, these communities, so that the behaviors stick. There's a difference between like going viral and being culturally contagious. That didn't just spread from person to person and kind of peter out, but it spreads from person to person and takes hold of culture, impacting our beliefs, behaviors, artifacts, and language, which is what I'm doing my doctorate research in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Marcus, you work with some very respected brands, so I'm curious, what is your main criteria before you decide to say yes or no to a client or a project?
So I don't make the call. Essentially, it's the scope of work that the agency says is deemable. But for me to work on the projects, there are things that come into the building that my team may touch that I don't touch. And unfortunately, I'm in a place in my career where I can say no, I'm not going to touch those things. I try to stay away from, I don't do any tobacco at all. And I try to stay away from alcohol, particularly because I don't consume it, right? And you know, I work with McDonald's as one of my clients. It's in the building. While there may be some may have issue with McDonald's, I don't, right? But if I worked in Anheuser-Busch for 4 years, and I've never tasted the product at all, right? And at that time, I couldn't say no. Where I was in my career, I couldn't say no. Today, I'd say no, thank you, just because it doesn't align to my beliefs. It doesn't align to what I like to do. And it'd be hard for me to sleep at night telling people to consume more, consume more, consume more. Tobacco I'm completely against, and therefore I won't even touch the stuff. But again, it's just me.
I had a question about what you've done when you've been a part of brands or their competitor has totally crushed it. Like you're working Miller and PBR sales are completely skyrocketing. Is the move usually to ride on their success or take the complete opposite stance?
I think it depends on where the brand is. So if you're the market leader and these guys are skyrocketing up, you don't want to put any spotlight on those guys. In most cases, it's kind of like that would be the conventional wisdom. I think about it like, remember when Drake and Pusha T were beefing out this summer, right? Drake is like here, Pusha T is not as high as far as acclaim, right? Pusha T throws jabs at Drake, Drake responds, and Pusha T's record sales go up. So all the times when you're the market leader, your job is just to save the market. Your job is to grow the market, grow the category. Someone throws shots at you or someone's rising up, just make sure that you keep the category growing until they become too close to call. In those cases, you find ways to thwart that. Sometimes it's acquisition, and then sometimes it's finding ways to block them.
Have you been a part of a brand strategy that has successfully combated a major spike in a competitor?
I would say, so State Farm, right? So State Farm, they are the market leader by far. But you see a lot of market share being acquired by particularly the Geicos of the world, Assurance, Progressive, Allstate. So State Farm's like, how do you keep the category growing, which the category is sort of, it's sort of self-moving because it's obligatory. If you want to drive in this country, you need auto insurance, right? But how do you get people to get homeowners insurance, to get it with us, get financial services, to get it with us, while these other guys are coming to the market? So we found ways to use culture to continue to boost the brand and broaden the aperture of the category, particularly doing the Cliff Paul campaign for State Farm, right? So instead of talking about how we're better than Allstate, how we're better than Geico, we just talked about how great State Farm is at helping you with the magical agent, like the neighbor State Farm's there, agent shows up. Or personify what happens when you have an agent with someone like Cliff Paul, right? Chris Paul, All-Star, State Farm, All-Star, point guard who throws assists on the court, Cliff Paul, All-Star, State Farm agent who throws assists in real life. All these things to manifest what the brand is all about so we can grow its presence.
Thank you.
Got it.
So I'm kind of interested in the brainstorming and then zeroing in on what we're going to do process.
Yeah.
Like I love the example of Potbellies that you just talked about, and you're gathering data, you're trying to understand what the brand really wants to go for, not just like sandwiches, but happiness.
Right.
So what does brainstorming look like? And then how do you say, okay, this is what we're going to go for? Because sometimes I watch a commercial and I'm like, I can't imagine someone in a room and being like, okay, this is what we're going to go with.
Yeah, right.
So I'm just wondering what it looks like to brainstorm and then make that decision on, okay, this is what we're going to move forward.
So for me, it's radical simplicity. Just radical, radical, radical simplicity. So the first question I ask is, why does the brand exist? What do we believe as a brand? How do we see the world? Because the way we see the world is how we behave in the world. So what do we believe? And once we realize what the why is, what the conviction of the brand is, now we know who to target. People who see the world the way we do, right? So now we know who we are and how we're going after, who we're going after. The next question is, what do we want them to do? Because marketing is one of those words that we use full of jargon, abstractions, buzzwords, right? Like, what is marketing? Ask 10 people, get 20 different answers. So I think about marketing as radically simplistic as possible. Old Oxford Dictionary defines marketing as going to market. Right? Marketing is going to market. The market being people. What's the core function of marketing? Get people to adopt behavior. So we know what we're all about as a brand. We know who we're going after. Now the question is, what do we want people to do? And all the messages, communications, campaigns, products, activations, they're all designed to get people to move. As simple as possible. All the other things that we build on it, the implications and whatnot, we can get into, but it all starts with who are we, who we're going after, what behavior we're going to take on. My pleasure. Thanks so much, guys.